City of Stevens Point Finance Committee meeting, recorded November 10, 2025.
Okay, we have 6:20. I will call a meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Comptroller Treasurer, please take roll. Marcy can take roll. Thank you.
Christensen?
Here.
Morrow?
Here.
Shuda?
Here.
Keemer? Here. Broderick? Here.
All right, we definitely have a quorum. I guess opening remarks, this was something I had added last month. Just very quickly, just want to remind people, we did get a chance to take a preliminary look at this budget. So it's nothing's a total shock. There are some slight changes that we'll be looking at, but I also want you to be mindful of our impact and remember the fact that we are just one out of 4 taxing entities, and try to keep in mind just what kind of an impact we're going to be having on our local taxpayers. So with that, we'll go on to item number 3 on our agenda, consideration of the 2026 operating budget. Comptroller Treasurer.
Yes, so this was presented last month at Special Finance. Since then, we've made a few changes to note. One is we're no longer proposing to contribute the $30,000 from the operating budget to Riverfront Rendezvous. That's something we typically have not contributed dollars from the operating budget to Riverfront Rendezvous. So basically, that was going to be a one-off type of a thing for 2026. And we're pulling that request to contribute that $30,000. And then we're also proposing to eliminate the $5,000 that we budget annually for deer culling expenses, and pausing that program of deer culling for 2026, and kind of seeing if are any issues after we pause that program. And then basically the way that we would use those savings is increasing the electrical inspector from 32 to 40 hours a week, which was just discussed at personnel. And then the rest of the changes, primarily updates to salaries and benefits. And then another large change is when we originally presented the budget, we didn't have the figures from the business improvement districts yet. So those have been incorporated into the budget as well and added. And then we were able to increase the amount for contingency as well, which is certainly a good thing, able to bring that more in line with what we've been able to budget in the past. So,
okay. Any questions of the Comptroller Treasurer from the committee? Okay. I guess a motion would be in order, so we can begin discussion.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a move to approve by Alder Broderick and a second by Alder Morrow. Not a lot of changes. We had, as I mentioned in the opening remarks, we did have a chance to see this prior to this. I guess as I looked at it, my one concern, I know when I was on City Council up in Washburn, we instituted a deer culling just because at that point in time, and this is 20 years ago, there was over $1 million worth of damage to vehicles from collisions. I'm a little concerned. I guess we can take a look and see what kind of an impact it has not doing it for 1 year. But I am a little bit concerned that we might be saving $5,000, but we might be incurring, the taxpayers may be incurring quite a bit of additional damage if we do have a significant increase in the deer population. So, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. $5,000 seems like a pretty minimal investment if we're able to avoid a handful of vehicle collisions with our furry friends. It might be a good investment, but those are my thoughts. Anyone else in the committee?
To follow up on that, do we have any data as far as the whatever year, as far as how many were actually taken care of?
Yeah, I believe Director Kramer would have that.
Excellent.
So as far as how many are actually called for that $5,000?
Yeah, so this program predates me by about a decade, I think. So I think they're in about year 14 or 15 or so. But essentially what happens is the city gets issued 50 nuisance tags. They have to be harvested by bow and arrow because you can't discharge a firearm in the city. So what I'm told is when it initiated, it was kind of a council-driven subcommittee. So 2 of the members of the subcommittee have been around since origination. There's been a vacancy in the committee for about a year and a half when one of the professors stepped away from the university. When it started, there was actually quite a bit of culling that happened around Century Insurance because you cannot hunt, or the city's unable to hunt in Schmeekly. And that's a pretty large hub of where a lot of the whitetails go in town. So at that time, there was a bunch of business support, and Comptroller, correct me if I'm wrong, but they used to solicit donations from the likes of Century and some other community partners at the time, and they worked in kind of that central core of the city. That's long kind of gone when the fencing and things went up around that area. So a grant started to get acquired about 7-8 years ago that was written by one of the committee members who's no longer a member of it. So the city would get a 50-50 match on kind of the program. So they get $5,000. They spend about $10 because it's $100 to harvest the deer. About year over year it can change with the color, and it's $100 to have it processed. The meat from the program gets basically recycled back into the food pantries. They can collect it from the meat processor. So for years it was 50. They were harvesting 50 pretty much year over year. In the grant program, we would get the car vehicle collision data from the police department, and it ranged. It would sometimes be in the teens, 15, 17. I think the highest I ever saw was in the mid-20s. We could get that report again, and we would report that in the grant. I don't know if there was a significant change. You know, certain areas, certainly like this time of year during the rut and things, there'd be more collisions. The biggest issue that the cullers are experiencing is because there's not really a central, other than Iverson Park, a lot of the culling is happening on the periphery of the city. So kind of going over towards like Yolga Park, Maria, kind of by the airport site, as well as the West River side of the city. There's a few that are taken in, by Iverson Park and some of those areas, but the callers have just stated that in the corridor of the city, there's really not a lot of properties they can get access to. And when they do, because of the bow and arrow, I can tell you that there's times also that they're not recovered. So you run into that issue too. So right now, the city is fully bearing for the last 2 years, basically $10,000 if they harvest the full 50. Last year, they harvested just over 30. The year before, it was a new color. I think they were right around 18. So this year, they're at about 33 already. They might actually fill out the tags. So what was discussed kind of as the staff, as we said, ultimately, because the committee's not been whole, and there's not been a whole lot of requests of, at the time, I guess a lot of residents were expressing, hey, we're having damage to plants and things of that nature, so they kind of had a pretty big spearhead or group behind it. Since then, because it's kind of taken its course for a long time, the discussion was, hey, if we paused it for a year or two, and if we saw numbers go up from the police department, or if we had residents express more concern, we could look at our options again. But ultimately, because of the grant funding kind of changing or not having somebody apply for it on that committee side, kind of the business support stepping away, it's almost been in rinse and repeat in a little bit of a way. Why I know so much about it is I'm kind of liaison. So essentially I take the minutes for the committee and I kind of help with some of the paperwork process, but they kind of direct me on what they want to do. A lot of the sites are in parks, so when the report comes in, I get to see the kind of parcel number. So ultimately, if the money stays in the budget, we can get the tags. So we apply through the DNR, they give the tags. The program can continue, but because there's not a grant reimbursable right now, unless the committee would revive that with their own kind of committee leadership, the city would be looking at that full expense in the budget.
And the full expense would then be $10,000.
It's $10,000 if we have to pay for the processing too. We had 1 year, not to ramble here, but 1 year we were able to participate in the Hunters for the Hungry program. So the city's deer went into what the DNR covers, but then after that year of doing that, they determined it wasn't eligible. So if I'm just hunting as a citizen outside the city and I shoot a deer, you can actually donate it. The DNR has a program that they process it and donate it back. Because we're on a nuisance tag, that's not eligible. So we go to the same processor, People's Meat Markets, who does it, but we actually pay a contracted rate of $100 per deer. My understanding is the meat all goes together with the program, but it's not eligible for us to utilize the DNR funds for that.
And obviously, you're part of this, and you may have even suggested that we just take a pause for...
Yeah, my biggest challenge that I will tell you that the biggest areas that we'll see some issues, we actually have not as much support for the program. I can tell you there's some areas that our callers are not able to go because there's a number of residents in the area around some of those parks that see the deer as a benefit. So that's the challenge I would tell you from kind of a public perception side, is there is quite a bit of, not everyone thinks it's a great program. So that's the challenge. And then not having some of those big parcels in the center of the city, it does make it difficult where the highest deer collision accident reports are not really in an area we feel like we can impact necessarily, especially because you have 400 acres, kind of surrounding this area here that there's really no way to impact.
Alderman Murrow.
I would love if you would take all those tags up to where I live, because there's so many dang deer. All my trees are just nubs. So I'd actually be for the program. I don't know if we would reinstate it, we would still, we would be like 5,000 short from what you're saying, no
Correct.
matter what we do. If we did add the 5,000, we'd still be 5,000 short. We wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, so this year alone, for example, if we pause today in 2025's operating budget, we're going to be at about $6,400 with the 32 deer they've gotten. Likely they'll shoot some more here before the end of the year, so we're going to be over budget this year for sure. And next year, if we would set the same 50 quota, we would technically need 10,000 if we're able to cover it, short of a grant being applied for from that committee and reviving it.
If we did 5, would we get 25 tags?
Yeah, so we can cap it, right? So while we're able to get to 50, if we chose to say we're going to budget 5 and just do 25, as long as the caller would agree, which I can't speak for them, we'd have to talk to them about the change. Yes, we could stop at 25 too.
So is the grant still eligible? We're just not applying for it?
Correct. So how this was structured before me was that the committee and the kind of the alder that was on at the time did their own grant process, and the individual that did that is who stepped away, and the committee just didn't carry it forward. So the grant is still there. You can apply for it, but it has not been applied for since that member stepped off the committee.
Do you know what the time frame is of that? Would we be eligible to apply for this next year?
Yeah, technically it could be submitted. It's usually in the spring. They award it in the summer, and then it can be used for that following season. Okay. And the maximum you can receive is the 5,000. If they're fully successful, they can structure that differently too, but that would be an option. So for example, if the council or finance committee would choose to say, let's budget 5, ask the subcommittee to find a way to apply for 5. Best case is if it's awarded, they could try to do the full program, or you could scale it back if the grant wasn't awarded too, ultimately. And again, in my 7 years or 6.5 years, I don't think there's ever been kind of a communication back as a goal from, like, say, the council or finance committee of saying keep it at 50, or it's just been kind of set up. So if that's what the finance committee would want the committee to do, I certainly can carry that message, and we could go that route too.
I would like to keep the $5,000 in if we could, without unduly hamper the other items that we have.
We should be able to handle it. Basically, what we would do is we would just dial back the contingency line item a little bit, but basically we're budgeting $103,000 now, so we'd pull that back to $98,000, which should still be sufficient.
Okay. I would move to at least keep the 5,000, because I agree with Mark. I think it would be a good. I think it would be a good program. And if we could just get 25, we'll just do 25 tags.
Okay. So as I understand it, is that a motion?
That is a motion, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you would make a motion to approve 5,000 if a grant does get applied for and received. We would keep it at the 50, and if we do not receive the grant, then we'll just do the 25?
Correct.
That is your motion?
That's exactly what my motion was, Mark. Thank you.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I will second it, just to add, because now I can discuss a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I don't mean, Dan knows what's going on and everything else, so I very rarely disagree with him. And I'm not really disagreeing with you now, except that I have received 4 or 5 calls in the last couple months. When is this going to be taken care of? So there is a contingency out there that
taken care of, like when are they going to
start taking care of some of it? So
super fair point. So I will say, if there's any alders that do get those calls, it is really helpful if you do forward them with the address, because I can tell you that the program does allow, if a resident has enough acreage, so if somebody has a 2-acre lot or something, they just have to be 300 feet from a habitable structure if they have the written permission. So we have had some cases where a resident will reach out, and if we have a park near or some public property, or if essentially sometimes a resident might own a couple double lots, or they have a little bit of acreage around them, we can get on private property too. So please do, if there's any calls that come in, we certainly, if we field them, we record them, we give them to the hunter. So
thank you.
Okay.
$100 a project.
Alder Keemer.
That's cheap.
Sure. I guess my only comment is that, it sounds like in the past that this grant was applied for by a committee member volunteering his or her own time. So it sounds like we would need another volunteer to provide his or her time to do that, or at least to assist park staff so that this burden doesn't fall entirely on them. So I guess, yeah, I would just like to, point that out or encourage, an interested party to volunteer or...
And that would be this coming spring?
Correct. And ultimately, I could tell you, in terms of my role, if the council and the finance committee directs that we want to do this, and this is a priority of the commission, we'll work it out. I think where we were kind of at was a place of where how it had been set up had kind of run its course of what I would call a liaison of my department. I would take this, if this is the route it goes, as kind of a direction now to say, hey, let's work this in, and we'll work it out with the committee. I think we'll have to get a new member for sure. I'll bookkeep what we've done, and then between their volunteer board meetings, we should be able to get it in order. Now that I would know it's a priority of the council. So.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Anyone else on the committee? Public? Alder
Guthrie,
Guthrie.
District 2. Oh,
Was that Mary?
that was Alder Kneebone, yes.
I was a member of the Deer Management Committee in about 2015 and 2016. And I'm sure I'm trying not to talk myself into volunteering to write the grant, but as I recall, it's not really very difficult, not like something you'd write to a nonprofit, to an altruistic foundation trying to get $100,000 for your nonprofit. Like Alder Schuda, I have also received a call about a deer decimating someone's tomato garden. On the other hand, we're surrounded by farmland and nature, and unfortunately, there are interactions. Driving more slowly, particularly at night, can help people avoid collisions. But I agree with Alder Morrow, and thank you, Alder Guthrie, for kind of letting me jump in here. I'd be happy to talk to Director Kramer about the grant, because I think it's important. And if we can get a matching amount of money, most of the complaints were citizen-driven, and this would allow the folks to respond to citizen complaints. So I'll be quiet now. And again, thank you, Alder Guthrie, for letting me kind of jump your time.
I would like to thank Mary Kneebone for volunteering.
She beat me to it. It's hers. Alder Guthrie, District 2, deer management and species management in an urban environment is an excellent opportunity for students and faculty at the institution. And I wonder when we last approach the Schmeekley director to talk about utilizing that land or working in partnership with their staff or their students to make a management plan. I happen to see that Mrs. Resch is on the meeting tonight. She represents the university. I wonder if it's about deer management that she calls in for, but I just, if the director of parks takes more leadership on regarding this, I think it's an opportunity to circle back to the Schmeekley folk and the university folk to see if we can get in there or if they can help us identify the right number to call and write grants. What an excellent opportunity, and I'll yield.
Good point. Anyone else from the public? Andrea.
I don't have any deer in my yard, and I live by the river, and I'm really happy. However, I am in support of this, but I want to look at it another way too. We're talking about the costs at the beginning, and when the meat's getting processed and it's getting donated in the end, is that an opportunity for sponsorship from the community that might be benefiting from the deer culling, where, hey, do you want to donate $100 for the processing? This is what's happening with the meat. Also, by explaining to people what's happening with the deer that are getting culled, you might get some people that are against it a bit more for it, because it's actually helping out other people in another population in the community.
Good points. Anyone else?
Actually, let me make one more. At the time that I was on the committee in 2015 and 2016, the meat was being processed basically at the processor's cost, because it was being donated to one of the local food pantries. And there were people that would sign up for the venison because they knew they might be able to get, or in the hopes that they would get some. So the fee's gone up probably like everything else, but the fee for the processing is probably at a lower fee than an individual would pay for their own deer.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of the motion as proposed by Alder Morrow would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. Okay, so now we have that. Let's, next item then would be, with that amendment to our operating budget, we'll now consider the entire 2006 operating budget.
Motion to approve the 2000.
You already have a motion.
Okay. Any other considerations, any other changes that people would like to discuss? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the 2026 operating budget with that slight change that was just made would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes. Item number 4. Consideration of the 2025 debt issuance, including the issuance of general obligation and revenue notes. Comptroller.
Yes, I did include the memo. Basically, there is something that did change since the memo was written with the stormwater borrowing. We were proposing to issue revenue notes, which basically means that it's backed by the revenue of the stormwater utility. Unfortunately, our municipal advisor got back to us over the weekend and basically said that we can't issue it as a revenue note because there's not enough debt service coverage in order to secure it with revenue. So what we would have to do is issue that portion as a general obligation borrowing so that the stormwater utility can still make that borrowing. And then obviously the stormwater rates would have to go up as well, since that was kind of the result of the analysis, was that right now they don't have sufficient revenues to take on another borrowing. Okay. So that is an update. And then also working with Director Lemke, we worked through the capital project list a little bit, talked about the cash balance of the stormwater utility, and rather than $2.5 million, we'd be looking at increasing that to $3.8 million so that we can reimburse for 2025 projects. So then that would increase the total general obligation borrowing to about $18.8 million. But then you wouldn't have the $2.5 million revenue issue on the stormwater side.
Down below.
Yeah.
Yep, if you take a look at page 8 in our packet, that's kind of what he's referring to. All right. Motion would be good to start discussion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Alder Morrow. Is there a second?
Go ahead.
Second by Alder Broderick. Committee, any questions, comments, thoughts?
I guess I have a question about that rate adjustment process for the stormwater and just kind of a general timeline. I mean, I seem to remember from the past there's sort of an official guidelines on to how to do that. So if you could just remind us all kind of roughly.
Yeah, we're actually in the middle of rate case analysis for water and wastewater at the moment, which is a little bit longer of a process. The stormwater one's a little simpler, being the smallest of the enterprises and very kind of straightforward expenses and revenues. There's some basic math we can apply to that. So when we're done with our rate analysis for water and sewer, I imagine we'll bring all three forward at the same time, looking for something effective near the beginning of 2026.
Okay. Excellent. Any other questions? Any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, we have the general obligation and revenue debt issuance as proposed. All in favor of approving it as presented would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes. Down to item number 5, resolution authorizing an application for the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation's fiscal year 26 site assessment grant.
Good evening, everyone. As the Community Development Department continues to make progress towards the redevelopment of the Edgewater site, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation does make assistance available for the environmental assessment and preparation for sites through the site assessment grant, and it's only a 20% matching grant, so we are looking at the total environmental site assessment plus demolition of 1466 Water Street wrapped up into one grant application. And so right now we're looking at a grant, commitment from the city of about $18,500, although as we work with Children's Wisconsin to ensure that they're housed in that building for the length of their lease and continuing with the assessment after they exit the facility, we are accounting for some increase in site assessment costs. If we are awarded the grant this year, we have about 3 years to spend it, so we should be well within that time frame to use the grant if we are awarded the funds.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion approved by Alder Kiemer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Schuda. All right. Questions from the committee or comments?
Is there an estimated timeline of when the award will be announced or determined?
If we were to submit the application next month, it should be within 2 months. It would be notified whether or not we will be proceeding with the full, further review of the grant.
Okay.
We should be able to move forward in early 2026.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Any from the public? Hearing none, all in favor of the resolution authorizing that application for the WEDC site assessment grant would indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes. Item number 6 on our agenda is approval of the claims paid. Comptroller Treasurer, anyone that you want to highlight for us?
Sure. So mainly it's capital project expenses as usual. A couple of large expenses related to the road projects that we have going on, and then also a couple of new garbage trucks that were quite expensive, and then also design services for City Hall.
Right. Motion to approve claims paid.
We have a motion to approve our claims paid by Alder Morrow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Broderick. Questions or comments?
2 new garbage trucks, all right.
Yeah, 2 new. Which, if you remembered, I was in the district where there's no pickup. Normally we have Tuesday, and tomorrow's Veterans Day, so there's no pickup, and then there's only like 3 people that had their garbage out this morning. I was one, so that was good, but.
Sounds like their alder should have said something to them.
Yeah, they're probably right. I'll probably get calls to that effect.
Used to be every Friday got that, with the Friday after Thanksgiving and the Christmas and Good Friday, and it seemed like every Friday, it would be us getting our trash pick up on a different day. So welcome to the
Tuesday's kind of unusual.
To the confusion.
Yep, it's so much fun. All right, so that being said, All in favor of the motion as presented would signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed would be no. And that is approved. That takes us to item number 7, a presentation of a proposal from Commonwealth Development Corporation of America for the development of the Shopko parking lot.
Yes, and I believe we have, the presenter was going to be online, so do we have somebody from Commonwealth to present?
Yeah, Tyler, Sharon, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right. So we have prepared a PowerPoint presentation for you guys. Do you have access to that, or would you like me to share my screen?
If you could just share your screen, I did enable that, so.
Sure thing. Give me one moment here.
There you go.
All right. Looks like we are live. Well, first and foremost, thank you guys for your time this evening. I know this is not customary to always have presenters for agenda items, but certainly appreciate you guys allowing us to be here this evening and ultimately expand upon Commonwealth's presentation for the Shopko lot redevelopment. Just to start off, this is a PowerPoint that was shared with the RDA previously, so any members that were either there or had reviewed the meeting minutes, there certainly will be some repeat information, but wanted to make sure that you guys were getting the full picture here, but also just advising that there certainly has been some updates. So diving into that, really would just like to start out and give a brief summary on Commonwealth and who we are as a company. We were founded in 2001 and started in Fond du Lac, so not too far from you guys. And what started out as a smaller development company that was addressing local affordable housing needs has ultimately grown exponentially in the last 24 years. Commonwealth now has an active presence in 24 states and continuing to address affordable housing to the best of our ability. To date, we've constructed 125 developments, which comprises of just over 8,000 units. And looking at our leadership team, they bring about 80 years of tax credit experience to the table. And then a couple accolades that we have received over recent years. One of the biggest ones that we like to point out is that we are one of the largest women-owned affordable housing developers throughout the country. Continuing just to expand upon that, one of the reasons where Commonwealth feels we've had great success over the last 24 years is our success with being able to obtain the financing that we seek to make sure that our projects can be executed. Looking at the national success rate, Commonwealth does have a higher hit percentage of about 30%, and have had really good success rate right here in our backyard of Wisconsin. And again, just attributing that to being thorough up front and diligent in our practices to make sure that what we are presenting is ultimately something that we can execute. As I previously mentioned, the leadership team brings about 80 years of relevant experience to the field, which is highlighted there in both our two principals and our president of development, and then also have shared my direct experience. I have been with the company for almost 6 years now. I'm our managing vice president of development, and to date have done about $223 million worth of affordable housing projects. Transitioning into the capital stack for the development proposal, you'll see specifically on the sources, that's where I would like to call your attention, and that Commonwealth is doing everything in our possibilities to leverage every dollar available to us in efforts of keeping the request from the city as low as possible. And you'll see that the main two sources there are utilizing the low-income housing tax credit, that's Section 42 housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, all kind of synonymous terms but mean the same thing. And then in addition to that, the project would carry debt through WIDA, who is the allocating entity of the tax credits. They also provide a little bit more favorable lending terms to these projects, just in knowing that they're affordable in nature and not generating the same revenues that, say, a market rate project. So just yet another way that WIDA, the allocating entity, strives to try to help these projects get off the ground. In addition to those three sources, we're targeting some other sources that at both the federal and kind of national level. The first one of that being is affordable housing program funds that are allocated through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago. In addition to that, some home funding from the Department of Administration. And then you'll see the city funds, and then in addition to that, we would intend on working with the city and WEDC to obtain a CDI grant, something that Commonwealth has had great success with, especially in recent efforts and working in the WEDC region that Stevens Point falls in. And then lastly, deferred fee. That is kind of Commonwealth's skin in the game, if you will. As I previously mentioned, these deals really don't cash flow much. So for a developer's share of how we can run a profitable business, we are allocated a developer fee from our investor. And part of that fee that we would be earning, we are looking to put back into the project to ultimately ensure feasibility. So all said and done, right now we're looking at about a total investment into the community of about $17.8 million. And then the use breakout is provided there as well for you guys. Transitioning into the unit mix, as I mentioned, this is affordable housing development, and one of the big things that we are doing on this project is utilizing a concept called income averaging. Not to get too complex with everyone, but ultimately what that allows us to do is hit lower income bands, but then also hit higher income bands, and you'll see that between with rents ranging from 30% of the area median income all the way up to 80% of the area median income. And again, the intention there is to really try to appeal to as many folks as we can within the community. And we believe we're doing that through the allocation of units at different affordability levels, but also doing that through the allocation of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units across each income segment. Again, just in efforts of really being able to appeal to as many folks as we can that are currently within the community that are looking for affordable housing. Couple things to highlight. 80% units was a big discussion with the RDA, and one of the big things just to highlight here is that the reason behind having some of the units at lower incomes, as I mentioned, is to obviously target a wide cast of tenants, but also it allows us to be more competitive for some of the other sources that we are looking to bring into the deal. And should we move units away, it jeopardizes the project's competitiveness with both WIDA for the low-income housing tax credits and also with the Federal Home Loan Bank for the AHP funds. So it's really crucial we kind of stick to this metric. And then the other thing just to highlight here was that there was 3 additional units added to the project between the initial presentation to the RDA to what you are seeing here. Those 3 units are noted here in red, with 2 additional units at the 2-bedroom mark and 1 additional room at the 3-bedroom mark. This was a slide that we had provided to the RDA, which I think is just of value to, again, just kind of hit on the wide ranges of incomes that we would be targeting with the project, and ultimately how that kind of directly impacts Stevens Point and current job offerings within the community that would be eligible for living at our complex, that you can see are very much individuals and or families that are directly contributing to the economic growth of the city. One of the biggest things of this project, in my opinion, is creating something more than just housing. And in working with staff early on, it was evident that there was a desire to really kind of have a catalytic project. I think the redevelopment of the Shopko lots has been something that has been going on for quite some time. And so now that the project is finally moving forward, it wanted to be more than housing. And so Commonwealth had kind of taken a step back and gotten a lot of great feedback feedback from city staff and wanted to really digest all of that and understand what we could do to make a project that is going to be impactful. And where we kind of landed on was implementing this community service facility, often referred to as a CSF space. And what we would look to do here is partner with the UW Stevens Point and ultimately bring forward a child care facility that would be on the first floor of the housing project and allow UW Stevens Point to kind of further expand their current offerings within the community. And the best part about the community service facility is that it is something that Commonwealth has done before. We do have a project right now under construction in Oshkosh, right downtown on their main street. So this was a model that we are familiar with on the development side with me specifically, but also with our in-house architectural design team, and really just kind of possessing that knowledge to understand what it truly takes to carry out something like this. And that all kind of dovetails back to some of my original comments on bringing you guys a development that we believe we can execute on. And so here is kind of an initial conceptual rendering of the project that Commonwealth is proposing. I shared this with the RDA, but just to pass it along with you guys, the intention here was really to kind of take some of the newer developments that are going on in the downtown area, such as the North Yards housing project, which is a really beautiful modern building, but then also kind of serve as that median between some of the existing historic buildings that have been downtown for a very long time. And so we kind of created this concept of a traditional historic style building with a lot of brick on the facade, but also implementing some newer construction styles with individual patios and balconies, and really just trying to make these units that are desirable, but also kind of fit from an aesthetic standpoint, just because we want to make sure that we're kind of weaving this in seamlessly versus creating something that doesn't have a sense of feel to the community. The other way we've really done that is kind of anchored this to be located right along Main Street, and just feel that will just continue to create a good sense of community and ultimately make folks that may own businesses in the downtown area or spend a fair amount of time in there, happy to see a development like this moving forward. And then looking at the site plan, so we initially had proposed, like I said, 47 units with 30 parking stalls. And so with that, I would like to kind of then jump to this next slide. So following the feedback we received from the RDA, it was evident that there were a couple key things that they would have liked to see with this development. And so we kind of took that feedback that we received from the RDA meeting, brainstormed with our team, brainstormed with the UW Stevens Point team, and brainstormed with city staff to ultimately come up with iteration 2, if you will. And so a summary of those are depicted here, and I'm happy to run through those. So as mentioned, the daycare is a really big component of this project. However, the feedback received there was the 3,000 square feet that was originally slated for their operations was not enough. And it sort of presented this issue of, yes, we need more space. We're excited to get into a new space, but it presents an issue in that we would have operations scattered across the community, and we're not certain that we would necessarily like to see that. And so while that discussion is certainly still ongoing, what we wanted to do was create more space for the university. And so what we've done is increase their footprint by double. So the 3,000 square feet is now 6,000 square feet, and actually takes up the entire Main Street frontage. Again, just kind of creating that, adding to the Main Street vibrancy, and just really making this an enjoyable development for the entire community. And we think having kiddos running around and playing just from a visual aesthetic, certainly not running along Main Street and playing, will just help build the character of this development, that it truly is more than housing. The other big concern that the RDA had for us was the lack of parking. So the original development called for 30 surface parking stalls with 47 units being proposed. Obviously, there was, there wasn't a stall per unit per se. And so, while we would still like to continue the discussions about on-street parking, as this future concept plan had kind of suggested that, realizing none of that is set in stone. And so I think for those reasons, the RDA wanted to make sure that there was sufficient parking for the development and that it was not relying on any sort of on-street parking. And so what we've done is implemented a parking structure. And so as a result of that, it would be above ground and actually would add an entire story to the development. And so that then allowed us to add 32 covered parking stalls within the building. So with the 32 stalls, plus the surface parking stalls, it allows us to have more than one unit or more than one parking stall per unit, excuse me. And so, we believe that would alleviate a lot of the parking concerns. And really don't see an issue with the 4 stories. As I already mentioned, the North Yards development is in close proximity to this building, which is 4 stories. And so I think certainly that would not feel out of place by any means. And that was really kind of our only way to achieve this creation of additional parking and daycare space. The only other way to really add additional parking here was to go underground. While Commonwealth certainly possesses the ability to do that, it does come as a great expense. So kind of thought this was a great middle ground area to land, and that we're getting parking, it's covered, it's going to be desirable of the amenity of the tenants, but it's still affordable. And lastly, we did add an outdoor play area for the daycare operations. And so as a result, the 30 surface stalls was then reduced to 25, but still between the 25 and the 32, you're over that mark of 50. And as I previously had mentioned, we added 3 additional apartment units. And that was merely a product of once we added the new story, there was just kind of this dead space. So really wanted to just kind of make the most of that area and make sure that, we're making the most of this development that we possibly can. So, at the end of the day, I appreciate all the feedback that city staff and RDA has given us to date, and truly believe that this second iteration of Commonwealth's proposal is a much better product, and like I said, it really allows us to create housing that is greatly needed, but it's much more than just housing. But with that, that is our summary and our proposal. Thank you again for your time this evening. I'm happy to field any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions from the committee first? Questions or comments?
Looks great, really.
Yeah. I guess I would just like to say I was at the RDA meeting when they were meeting before and had a chance to hear their concerns and watched your presentation. I'm impressed with your solutions and the way that you took to heart the recommendations that they came up with and the requests. So,
thank you.
Anyone from the community?
I really appreciate the presentation and that you are keeping the community involved and working with the university too, and added outdoor play space, because I was somebody that went to UCLCC growing up, and outdoors was one of the best things there. One of my concerns is that, okay, if one of the goals is to increase population density, we still are at the 4 stories right now. Is there the option to do 5 stories to increase the number of units? And I don't know if it's why you guys didn't consider this or if it was a city type of issue. And then also, just overall, we have had no owner-occupied discussions for downtown. And that's a problem because almost all of downtown is investor-owned, and this isn't going to change that. You do not have people that are going to be staying there for a long time, people that are relocating from their current homes to downtown to live in their retirement ages, and those are people that are going to be spending a lot more money downtown. The daycare will bring in a lot of people via traffic-wise to be utilizing things downtown. However, I still have that major concern that us as a community are doing nothing to actually get owned housing downtown, and that would make a big difference down there.
Thank you, Andrea.
Dustin Boozy, District 10 Elder. I thought the presentation was good. I wanted to comment on the daycare space and how it's proposed within a affordable housing structure. And I know it sounds like there's some ongoing discussions between the daycare provider, UWSP, and the developer. But I didn't hear in the presentation if the space for the daycare was aligned with the affordable housing cost structure of the units. As I understand it, UWSP runs their own daycare service. I don't know all of their intricacies. We have children that attend there, but we aren't aware of there being a affordable cost structure for the daycare, and I don't know if that's something that's been discussed along with having this housed within an affordable cost structured unit. To me, those two things don't necessarily align, but I don't know if there's still ongoing discussion taking place. So it's something I wanted to call out and point out that I found. Thank you.
Bob Butt, owner of Dive Point Scuba, 944 Main Street, also owner of the property. Okay. This just came to light. I haven't been following things. It just came to light with the bid board meeting and bringing this whole project to light. I gave my opinion then, and I'm just going to repeat a lot of the things, and a lot of other things have come to light since then. I think we've lost sight. This is the central business district, not the central residential district. Okay, this isn't for residences. The residences occurred upstairs because businesses were downstairs. I don't see any business in this whole project. Okay, the business of renting apartments, I guess, is there, but I don't see any business. Okay, it's also in the wrong place. Okay, low-income housing downtown, wrong place, wrong time, wrong place. Okay, we've got enough housing downtown, all right, and we've got other issues downtown, and I think this is just going to add to those problems. Okay, we need more retail business space, not downtown, not more residential space. Okay, prime location. You couldn't pick a better prime location downtown, and they're getting it, what, for $1? You're giving this space to them for $1. Okay, that is a prime retail space downtown. All right, right now it's being utilized for parking. All right, also parking. Executive Place, wasn't there an agreement with Executive Place to have parking for them? You're taking that away. It's gone. All right. What else? Funding. I was just looking at their funding, and the city's given them, what, $1.4 million? Okay. I didn't see anywhere from this corporation, it was a Commonwealth corporation, I didn't see a penny of their own money. They're getting money from every other government agency, and it doesn't look like they're putting a penny in themselves. Am I wrong? I don't know. Okay. It didn't look like it up on the thing there. All right. I've been downtown since 1999, owned the building downtown, and before that, I was downtown, worked at Hunter's Corner in the early 80s, and I saw the mall come and go, okay? And when they put it in, it was a boondoggle, and I think this is a total boondoggle, okay? 15 years from now, all right, if you go back and look at when the mall was put in, 20-some years later, it was empty, and again, it was a horrible idea, and I think this is a horrible idea. You talk about North Yard. That plan was horrible. Okay, they wanted retail business on the first floor, and they haven't been able to get hardly anybody to rent, okay, because basically they didn't design it properly. All right, basically on the first floor they wanted strip mall. Ultimately, businesses, strip mall. Well, what do you need for a strip mall? You need parking. There's no parking. All right, who would rent one of those spaces in the north side yard on the first floor to run a business? Nobody. I think Edward Jones is the only one in there, and they're probably doing most of their business over the phone. So you can't pull in there off the street with angle parking and do anything. All right. Again, parking downtown. 15 years from now, I'm curious what it's going to look like. I'll be gone. Okay. I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to work that long, and I foresee it being a slum. Sad to say. Okay, low-income housing, unfortunately, who knows what it's going to look like in 15 years from now. I think that's all I have to say.
Okay.
I think it's a horrible idea.
Anyone else?
I just want to say one more thing really quick. We talked about live work before many times, and I think that the Alder made a really good point too about having stipulations in there prior to signing an agreement, because one of the reasons why the north side yard is vacant is because there were nothing in there about having anything as specific rental price or doing anything to ensure that that space was filled prior to be able to fill up the other residents or the residential space. Like, you can say a certain percent of the commercial space has to be rented out prior to you being able to start making money from all the rental spaces up above. And also, we didn't have a stipulation in there where they couldn't be using those units for Airbnb or for tourism units. Is that something that could possibly happen here, where tourism units might end up occurring? So I just say dot your I's, cross your T's, and it would be great too if we could keep with some of the downtown and how historic downtowns are with some live work, and making sure that we're protecting ourselves in the long run to make sure that people can afford the daycares, and that you're bringing in people from a bunch of different demographics too, to be able to utilize it, and not just the people right there, and make sure that there's an agreement with the university prior to like going forward with everything.
Anyone else?
I'd like to make a comment. I appreciate Commonwealth addressing some of the things we talked about at the RDA meeting. And I seem to remember from the United Way's life report that about 80% of the people in the county are asset limited, income constrained, and employed. Folks that will live in these apartments are working people that just need a break. Perhaps if their housing is affordable, they will walk down to the restaurants on Main Street and spend some money. If they're living in an apartment they can barely afford, they don't have that kind of disposable income. And with all due respect to the individual, it offends me to say that in 10 years it's going to be a slum. You have no idea, but not an appropriate time or place. But every person deserves a place to live that they can afford, that will allow them to put food on the table. You've got a daycare on the first floor. You've got a transit hub across the parking lot. It's the perfect place for someone working 2 jobs or 2 working adults with 1 car to be able to easily accommodate working schedules. So this company has a great reputation, and I think this would be a catalyst. I look at this as a catalyst project for that area. The longer nothing is there, the longer nothing will be there. Thank you.
Alder Morrow.
One thing that was in the presentation was that this isn't low-income housing, this is mixed-income housing. So there is some of, because he did talk about some are going to pay full price, some aren't. So it's just not a total low-income housing area. It's going to be mixed income. It's going to be mixed income housing. My understanding too is all the apartment. I think most of the apartment complexes that we have that are down there are like 90% full, from what I understood. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that someone said that that one was like almost empty. And to my knowledge, with the housing that we have built, it's been filled. So this is really this is really kind of serving a need that we do have. Do I wish there was something else that maybe could have gone in there? But we could only work with what is actually offered to us. The mayor would say, well, I want an Olive Garden here. Well, Olive Garden doesn't want to come here. We really can't force them here. And we have to take the projects that we have. And we do have a housing need here as well. And this is going to fill part of that need. We get what we're offered, and we see what we're able to actually work with. And since this does fill a need, there isn't anything that's totally signed yet, so we're still working through the process. Am I correct, Corey?
Yeah, this is just a presentation.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. So there's still avenues to change things and so on, but this is a start, and this is the start of that process that we have so that the community is involved.
I guess my final comment would be, and it kind of echoes what I said back at the Redevelopment Authority meeting, the one thing that I think attracted me to that impressed me about this project as well was the variety. It's a variety of income levels, but anywhere from the 30% of the median all the way up to 80% for the median, and the variety of types of apartments that are being presented, and so you'll have a real nice mix of people. There's 1-bedroom apartments, 2-bedroom apartments, and 3-bedroom apartments. So you'll have families, you'll have individuals. It's going to be what's being proposed, I think, is a nice heterogeneous mix. So, anyone else? Otherwise, that brings us up to item number 8. We'll enter into closed session approximately at 6:40. Maybe not. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent E, and 19.85, parent 1, parent G, for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and for conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved relating to the following: A, consideration of a claim bicyclist collided with city-owned vehicle; B, negotiating a potential development agreement in Tax Incremental Financing District 10; and C, negotiating the sale of property in Tax Incremental Financing District 14. After that, we will be reconvening for possible action on the above referenced closed session items. So we are now in closed session. We need a roll call, a motion and a roll call. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Moreau and a second by Keemer. Roll call.
Morrow?
Aye.
Shuda?
Aye.
Keemer?
Aye.
Broderick? Aye. Christensen?
Aye. And we're in close. We have 8:21. We're back in open session. First item in open session would be a consideration of the claim with a bicyclist collided with a city-owned vehicle.
Motion to deny claim.
We have a motion to deny by Alder Morrow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Broderick. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the denial of that claim would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed would be no. And that claim is denied. Second item is the negotiating a potential development agreement in TIF District Number 10. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to proceed with negotiations on the development agreement in TID 10. TIF
Okay,
10.
so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
Next one is.
All in favor of negotiating that development agreement in TIF District 10, would it signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no.
Oh, okay.
And then finally, the last item is negotiating the sale of property in TIF District Number 14.
Sorry.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to proceed with the negotiation in TIF 14, the sale of
Second.
property.
Okay, we have a motion to proceed with the sale of property in TIF District Number 14 as discussed in our closed session. All in favor of that, negotiating that sale would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that exhausts our agenda. We stand adjourned at 8:23.
Next step.